what is AWS EC2? We'll go over that in this video and how to create an EC2 instance. I hope you guys enjoyed the What Is series that I've been doing. I already created one for S3, I already created one for Lambda, and now EC2 is getting the treatment. So hope you guys enjoy that. You can go ahead and leave a subscribe and like if you want to see more. And yeah, let's get into it. So if you want to know more information about AWS EC2, I already created an article. So if you guys want to read up more about it, you can go to thinkmoretech.com and read up more about EC2, some of the features, use cases, and how to actually create it step by step. So you can get this at Think More Tech, and you can go to the post of all the posts that I created in the AWS section, and I'll leave a link in the description. But this is what is AWS EC2 and how to create an EC2 instance. Amazon EC2 stands for Elastic Compute Cloud, because you see compute cloud, 2 C's, right? All right, so it is a scalable computing capacity in AWS cloud. It allows you to create as many virtual servers within AWS as you need, right? So using AWS EC2 eliminates the need to invest hardware upfront. You can just begin to develop and deploy applications within these servers or within these virtual servers that you create within AWS. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, doesn't that remove a lot of the configuration that I would get when configuring my own hardware or doing the initial development of my servers? Not exactly. With AWS EC2, the user also retains all the control of configuring security, networking, and managing storage capacities based on the needs of the application. Even with AWS EC2, there are solutions for handling spikes in usage of the server by scaling up or even scaling down when requests towards that server also goes down. So that adjustment based on traffic also saves on costs. So for companies or hobbyists, meaning anyone who has an idea that they just want to play around with servers and not have to invest upfront or so much upfront for these servers, can look into running servers on EC2, but also don't have to worry about investing in hardware. So it is a great solution. Even companies with the funds to get their own infrastructure still should use AWS EC2 because, like I said, it's easy to set up, it's easy to scale up and down if needed without having to invest upfront and waiting on the completion of those infrastructure to be built. It's already built for you. All you have to do is start it up. So before diving in a little bit more, I wanted to show some features of AWS EC2 just so you guys can see the power of it. So the first thing is pre-configured instances. So AWS has pre-configured instances optimized based on the needs of the user, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later on. But essentially, AWS already has pre-configured settings for your own servers based on the computing power that you need, based on your needs. So like I said, we'll dive a little bit more into that in a few. The second is metadata. So you can provide tags based on what the EC2 instance is going to do. So say for instance you have like 30 EC2 instances running. These tags will allow you to show what each individual instance is doing, because it could get confusing as your backend or as your servers start to grow. So number 3 is temporary storage. So data that can be stored temporarily. So if you close your EC2 instance or if you shut it down, it will be lost. So it's a use it or lose it type of model. So this is an instance that is used to store volumes, but once the server is off, the data is gone. But then there is persistent storage, which allow you to persist the data within your servers using Amazon EBS volumes. So even if your server is shut down, once it starts back up, it'll just take that information from those volumes and the data will still be available. So number 5 is virtual networks. So you are allowed to isolate your EC2 instances away from the rest of your products or away from the rest of AWS Cloud if you want to. You can connect it to your own network if you want to through AWS VPC. Then there is multiple locations, right? So a cool thing about it is, like I said, you don't have to invest into building all this infrastructure for your own servers. All of this is done by AWS, and the cool thing about it is that you can put these in. You can put your instances in multiple locations, so that allow your resources to become highly available and safe if any issues arise in one location. You have it in multiple locations. So that's some of the features that AWS EC2 offers. All right, so just to get some type of illustration up and so you guys can have a better understanding of what this is, I created this illustration showcasing EC2 in the cloud. So you have AWS, and that encapsulates everything, right? And then you have a VPC, which is, the virtual network, right? And I have that encapsulating the EC2 instance. So what does this mean? I just went over use cases, and one of the use cases was you can create your EC2 instance within a virtual network, meaning that if you want to keep it private, if you want to keep it isolated, you can. If you want to make it public, you can, right? But what essentially this is doing is, this is an EC2 instance that will be holding, or this is a server, as you can see, is a server within the cloud that will be holding our application. It could be a web app, it could be a API, it could be a database. All of that is within the cloud, configured by us, right? And I have on the left the internet, and what that would do is, wherever it comes from, whatever client is used, it will communicate with the EC2 instance that's in AWS, that's within a VPC, that's within our EC2 instance. So whether it's a website that needs to be returned, whether that's an API that needs to return a response, whether that's a database that needs to insert data or update data, or whatever the case may be, it will be encapsulated within AWS. It could be encapsulated within a VPC, which I would recommend, and it'll be hosted on EC2. And also, obviously, I wouldn't make it so openly accessible. You would probably have a gateway service. You'll probably use other AWS services to communicate with EC2, maybe a Lambda function. But all I'm saying is that, the power of it, right? We don't have to worry about the hardware. Everything's already hosted in the cloud. AWS handles all the hardware things. All we got to do is configure it based on what we need. And it even come with pre-configured instances. So if we need, something that's more general purpose, we could, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But everything's already handled for us. We still have the ability to, handle the security, the networking, like I just showed. If you want to create a VPC and, make sure that only certain IPs are able to communicate with this EC2 instance, you can. But you can see the power of it and how fast you'll be able to create this compared to waiting for a year or two for your servers to be created in real life. This is all handled by AWS. So like I said, AWS has pre-configured instances that you can use based on the needs of your server. So I've been saying instances many times, but you're probably wondering, what is an instance? An instance is simply a virtual server used for running applications using the AWS infrastructure. So EC2, like I said, provides different types of instances to fit the needs of the user. This can range from CPU memory, storage capacity, networking, and even different operating systems. The user has the ability to mix and match based on the needs of the application and requirements. So these are some of the pre-configured instances that are available through AWS. There's general purpose, which is a balance between memory, computing, and networking. So this is perfect for diverse workloads. So it's, general purpose, right? Then you have compute optimized. So more juice in the processing power, perfect for batch processing, media transcoding, scientific modeling, game servers, and much more. Then there's memory optimized, which is processing data from and to memory effectively. Then there's accelerated computing, great for graphic processing and calculations, performing functions, used with workloads that need hardware accelerators or co-processing. Then there's storage optimized, which means it's perfect for workloads dependent on high sequential reads and writes of data into storage, and designed to deliver requests with ease and low latency. Then there's high performance computing, which is short for HPC, optimized, designed for memory bound and data intensive high performance computing. So like I said, each one of these instances have their own purposes, but usually people go with general purpose because they usually want a more balanced approach, and it's the most versatile one out of all of them. But if you need something with a little bit more juice, you just look at what exactly your application is going to do and pick an instance based on that. So in life, my parents always told me that there's nothing in life that is free, and that's the case here. Well, if you have the free tier of AWS, you get it free for up to a year, but that includes 750 hours of Linux and Windows T2.micro instances. So there's a specific instance that you have to use, and you only get up to 750 hours of it using Linux and Windows. So that's the free tier. There is the on-demand, which you pay for computing capacity based on by the hour or by the second, depending on how long you run the instances. But it's usually the most expensive. Then there's spot instances, which you can bid for EC2 resources that are otherwise going unused. You don't get access to the resource on demand, but it gives you spare computing capacity. But it is also 90% off compared to on demand price. So if you want to save some money, spot instances is not too bad. Then there's the reserve instances, which it give you access to a dedicated finite amount of resources for a fixed duration, but in return you receive a discount on the base price compared to on-demand instances. Then there's dedicated hosts. A dedicated host is a physical EC2 server dedicated for just your usage. So you can think of a server rack just dedicated for only you. And a lot of people would like that. You don't have to share anything with anybody else. That whole rack is just dedicated for you. And you also have access to physical server. You can install commercial operating systems on it and use the license that you already own. So I guess if you're more of like a bigger company and you just want to make sure that you have a dedicated host, this is an option for you as well. So now we got a gist of what EC2 is. Now it's time to make an EC2 instance. All right, so first let's choose the region that we want our EC2 instance to run on. So log into the AWS console, and then on the right you can use the drop down to select which region you want your EC2 instance to run on. I'm going to choose North Virginia, US East. And then I am going to go to the EC2 dashboard. So use the search bar, put EC2, click it, and now we should be on the EC2. So there's a couple ways that we can create this EC2 instance. So I'm going to show you really quick. So the first thing we can do is we can go to instances right here and click it. And then you're going to see a bright orange button that says launch instances. Click it, and it'll bring you to this page where we can put in the information to launch an instance. Or if we go back, we can also click this orange drop down right here that says launch instance, and then click the button that says launch instance, and it'll bring us to the same page. So now to create an EC2 instance, all we got to do first is specify a name that we want to give the server. So I want to give it a server name of twg-server. And if you want to add any additional tags, you can press this button and do that, but I am not going to do that. Then the second piece is application and OS images. So essentially the Amazon machine image. So an Amazon machine image, or an AMI for short, is a supported and maintained image provided by AWS that provides information to launch an instance. So as you can see, some of the quick ones that they give is an Amazon Linux image, Mac OS, Ubuntu, Windows, Red Hat, and there are so much more. It even says there includes 1,000 of application and OS images, so there's a lot to choose from. But since I am going to use the free tier version, I am going to use the Amazon Linux version, and I am going to go down and choose the free tier eligible specifications. Now you can open up the drop down and choose the specification that fits you. Like I said, there's different versions that you can choose from, but remember, if you're trying to use the free tier version, make sure that it says free tier right here if you're eligible for it. And then you can even choose the architecture. So if you want ARM or x86, you can use the drop down to select that. I'll keep it at x86. And if you want to know what exactly is the description and the ID, that can also be found here. So next is the instance type. An instance type is the group characteristic that includes computing, memory, storage, and networking resources. So currently AWS has over 500 instance types, and they charge by the time that the user uses the instance. So you can see some of the pricing here at the bottom. They charge by the hour, or how long the EC2 instance is being used. And I am using t2.micro, that is the name, and this is the one that is free tier eligible. If we open this up, you'll see a drop down, and you'll see another one is t1.micro, and that's even less memory, and that's still 1 vCPU. This t2.micro is 1 vCPU and 1 gigabyte of memory. But if you want more power, and you start scrolling down, and you can start seeing this large, extra large, you start to see that the vCPU increases and the gigabyte memory increases, but you also should see that the price per hour increases as well. So think of that wisely. In this case, for this tutorial, I'm still going to use the free eligible version because I'm not trying to pay. As long as you're free tier eligible, this should be free. But if you want more power, then you can scroll down and pick the one that fits your needs. The next piece is the key pair login. You can essentially think of this as the login credentials for your EC2 instance. So if you do not have one, which I do, I already created a key pair, then you can press create new key pair, and all you got to do is specify a name, and what's going to be generated is a .pem file or a .ppk file, depending on what you're going to use. So if you're going to use OpenSSH, or if you're going to use PuTTY, then use the .ppk. And you could choose the key pair type, so it could be RSA or it could be ED25519. That's just the encryption type, right? So choose the type, choose the format of the private key, and then the name, and generate a key pair. I already created one, so I'll just use the same one that I have from before. And then now you can scroll down a bit. Now it is the network settings, so it's configuring who and what has access to your instance. So the networking settings will allow you to provide security groups if you already have one, or if you want to create one, you can do that as well. To determine the rules on access based on incoming and outgoing traffic to your EC2 instance. So you can specify ports, IPs, or like I said, if you want to use previously created security groups, you can. It usually can restrict HTTPS and HTTP, and by default EC2 restricts them. So like I said, like right here, you can allow HTTPS and HTTP. That's a little bit of a tongue twister for me, but you can allow it if you want from the internet, but I'll keep it just like this. But I will allow SSH traffic from anywhere. And you know, like I said, if you want to select an existing security group, you can, but I'm just going to create a new one with this rule set. And it's going to warn you that rules with, you know, an open IP will allow anything to access it. So they usually recommend that you make it more secure. I also recommend the same thing. Then the next piece is the storage settings. So EC2 instance comes with an EBS volume attached. By default, for me, or currently, it is 8 gigabytes, and I don't want to change that. I'll keep it at 8 gigabytes. But the volume can be configured in this setting piece right here. And you can change it based on your needs. But like I said, I'll keep it at 8 gigabytes. But free tier eligible customers can have up to 30 gigabytes. So it's based on what you need, and it can be SSD or magnetic storage. So it's up to what you need. Or if you want to add a new volume, you can. So. And then there is advanced details. So if you want to request spot instances, or you want to select from the domain join directory, or if you want to specify a host name type, instance auto recovery, etc., etc., there is so much additional settings that we can create. I am not going to change any of these, but just know that if you want to, just open up the advanced details, and that'll be available for you. So now that you know everything is how we wanted it to, we have the selected AMI with the proper architecture. We chose the instance type that I want is free, if I'm free tier eligible. We chose the key pair, which is our login credentials, and if we don't have one, then we would have generated one right here using the create new pair. We adjusted the network settings based on our needs. So we created a new security group. We're allowing currently traffic from anywhere using SSH, but like I said, I would recommend you tightening that down. You don't want everything to be able to have access to it, but just for this tutorial, I'm going to keep it open. And then I configured the storage. I'm just going to keep it at 8 gigabytes, but if you're free eligible, then you have up to 30 gigabytes, or if you need more than that, you can also specify that as well. And like I said, lastly, there's advanced details, so you can go through this and adjust based on needs. Once that is done, and you can see some of the stuff here, and if you click on it, you can go to specific points of the creation steps, but everything looks good to me. I'm just going to launch this instance. So it's going to create everything. It's going to start launching it. And then now, if we go back to instances, we will see now we have a new server, and it's currently in the pending state because it's still creating it. We see the availability zone that is in. We see the public IPv4, And if you have an Elastic IP, or if you're using IPv6 IPs, it'll be here. Monitoring is disabled, but if it wasn't enabled, you'll see it here. The security group name and key name. So a lot of information in regards to the EC2 instance. And if I refresh that, it's still pending. So I'll be back when this is done. Alright, so now after a couple of seconds or a minute or two, our server is created. So if I click on the ID, it'll bring us to this little section that specifies the details about our server that was just created. And then, we have different tabs. So first is the details. You'll see details in regards to your currently running server. Go to the settings section, and we can see the security group that is attached to our application. And then if I go back, we can go to networking. That will show the public IP that's currently attached to this, as well as the endpoint, the DNS. So, all that's available, the availability zone, and the private IP as well. So the different information in regards to networking. Storage. So, currently we have an 8 gigabyte EBS volume that we attach. It is not encrypted, but yeah, this is where that information will be. And then the status checks, that's still being initialized, but that'll be here. Monitoring, and that was disabled, so that's not gonna really show much. And then there's tags. So if you want to see tags to give information about what this server is doing or what it's about, because like I said, if there are many EC2 instances, you may want to add tags to specify or to show what exactly this server is going to be doing. So yeah, cool. Those are the tabs that it come with, and there's a lot more stuff you can do with this. There are a lot more things you can play around with on the side. So if you want to add a load balancer, you can go to this load balancer section, create a load balancer from here. If you want to do auto scaling or configure that, you can do that from here. If you want to play around with the elastic block store, you can do that here. So there's a lot of things. You can create another volume. So we already have one that's 8 gigabytes. You can create a new one. And yeah, so, and then if you want to play around with the instances and create or request a spot instance, and or if you want to get a dedicated or allocate a dedicated host that we talked about, you can do that from here. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do with an EC2 instance, but that is how you can create one. And I just use the free tier. Hopefully in the future, as my channel starts to grow, I can invest a little bit more into actually creating a bigger one so you guys can see it in action. But that is how you create an EC2 instance in AWS, and it's pretty simple. If I go back to the dashboard, you can see that there's only one currently running instance, and there's one key pair that I created. I have some security groups because I made multiple EC2 instances before, and each time I created a new security group, so that's why I'm showing 3. But then the volume is the volume that's attached to the instance that's running. So yeah, that's, if I click on instances, you should see your server. So yeah, it passed the status checks, it's running, its type is showing, and yeah, we're good to go. So hopefully that was helpful. If you enjoyed that, go ahead and like, subscribe, and yeah, the next service we will create together, it should be RDS, AWS RDS.